Hi guys, it's Izzy and today... No, I can't. I actually can't. Hi guys, it's Izzy and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap up. This month I read 13 books, quite a lot of them were rereads. It was a rereading kind of month. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks because I've had really bad headaches, so I really love listening to audiobooks of books I've already read. I find it really entertaining because you get to hear it in a different form and get to take in the story again in a different way, and I really enjoy doing that, and I was just in the mood for a lot of my favourite books. So I'm going to try and not spend too much time on each book because I don't want to make this video too long, so let's get started. The first book I ended up finishing in June was Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. I had read Diviners in May, so I moved on to Lair of Dreams. I gave this book 5 stars. I didn't know Lair of Dreams was my favourite book from the series, but Lair of Dreams is my favourite book from the series. This book is like pure genius, like literally pure genius. Libba Bray is literally incredible, like her mind. She has created such an incredible story. There's so much foreshadowing, there's so many parts to the story, like I literally don't know how she kept track of it in her head. Like there's just so much going on and there's so many side plots and so many running general themes throughout the 3 books that we have currently. King of Crows is coming out early next year. My body's not ready, I'm not prepared. It's gonna be like the best day of my life, I hope. But in case you don't know, the Diviners series is about a group of characters living in New York in the 1920s. They all have diviner type powers, like one girl can read objects and see their pasts, one boy can heal people, one boy can turn invisible, two people can walk in dreams. So there's a lot of variation, but there is a overall mystery about where the diviners came from and why they came in the first place, and it is incredible. The characters are amazing, the plot is amazing, it's just incredible. So yeah, big fan. The next book I read was Her Royal Highness by Rachel Hawkins. This is about Millie, a girl who is American but wants to go to a prestigious school in Scotland for her final year, I think, of high school, and she gets to go to this school in Scotland, and her roommate turns out to be a Scottish princess named Flora. They have quite a strange relationship to begin with, but then they start to develop a friendship, and more than a friendship. So this has a female-female romance in it. The main character Millie is bi and the love interest Flora is a lesbian, so they're pretty great. I gave this book 4 stars. It took me a while to get into it. At first I wasn't really that attached to the characters. Like Millie was fine, she just wasn't giving me a lot. She was just sort of quite bland as a character. She was just alright, and again Flora felt a little bit forced as a character. Like we were supposed to be like, oh yeah, she's really annoying, even though she wasn't that annoying. But I really got into it as their relationship developed further, and I got a lot more invested into it, and overall it was just a really fun read. Like if you want a cute summery romance that happens to be female as well, then I would definitely recommend this book. It was just really cute and really fun and a great summer reread, and I would definitely give it a go if you were curious. This is technically the 2nd book in a series. The first one being called just Royals, I think. But I heard they were companion novels and you didn't really have to read the first one to read the second one, but there are like Easter eggs from the first one and the second one. So you can read the first one first and then the second one, but I just read the second one and I found that fine, so if you were curious. The next book I read was Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Bray. This was the 3rd book in the Diviners series, and I've said pretty much all I need to say about the Diviner series. I will continue to speak about this series until the day I die. I'm obsessed with it. It's so incredible. Like, I'm obsessed with it. It's just so good. If you were on the fence about reading it, or maybe you read the first one and weren't as into it, just either start or keep going, because these books just get better and better and better and better. It's incredible. Next book I read was To Best the Boys by Mary Webber. I gave this book 2 stars. I did not particularly enjoy it. The premise of this book is about a girl called Wren who lives in like old-timey England or something. She lives in the countryside. There's no technology. I don't really know when it's supposed to be set, but it's set in like the olden days. And every year there is a contest for the boys of the town. They have to compete in a labyrinth task so that one of them, the winner, can get a scholarship to one of the universities. It has always been open to just boys, so Wren cannot participate, but she is losing her mother to a fatal illness that has swept the town, and she is trying to figure out a way to cure it, and thinks that perhaps if she enters the labyrinth as disguised as a boy, she could go to the university and find a cure for this illness. My main problem with this book was it was just so darn predictable. Like, I read like 50 pages and I could have told you exactly what was going to happen. It just didn't really do anything to try and mix up very classic tropes and a very step-by-step sort of plot. It just was so boring, because every time something happened I knew exactly how it would be solved, and it just didn't keep me interested at all. If I hadn't been reading it on an audiobook, I definitely wouldn't finished it. Reading it physically, I would have DNF'd it after like 60 pages because it was just so dull. And the characters were also extremely bland. I literally couldn't tell you anything about the main character except that she liked science. That was it. The side characters were pretty irrelevant and boring. The writing was also a big problem for me too. The dialogue, the prose was pretty okay, but the dialogue was painful. This is what I would have written at 14 and thought was like natural speak. It was so clearly written. You couldn't actually imagine anyone saying the dialogue that these characters were given. It was so awkward and clunky and weird, and it just felt very unnatural. And also she kept using the word countenance. I barely knew that word. I'd never really seen it in a book, but she was using it left and right. She's got a real obsession with the word countenance. Don't know why. So overall the plot was just really boring. The labyrinth wasn't exciting at all, which I was expecting it to be, and I just didn't enjoy the plot at all. The only thing I did like is it did say some really great things about feminism. I really agreed with everything it said, and that was what I liked about the book, is it did say some great things about gender and that kind of stuff. So at least it had that. The next book I read was You by Carolyn Kepnes. I gave this 4 stars at the time, but I think I'm going to bump it down to 3 stars. This is a book about a man named Joe who's obsessed / stalking this woman named Beck. This is written in second person, so that as Joe is narrating, he says, you go to the window, you come outside. He's speaking about Beck, but it's written in the second person, which is an interesting writing technique, and I think it did really work well in this. But after a while it kind of lost its creepiness to me, because I kind of got used to it and it just didn't really like creep me out after that. But I was expecting it to be a lot more creepy than it was. I don't know if that sounds weird, but I just didn't find it that scary or that gripping. I had a good time reading it, but I think it'd been hyped up too much for me, and I was just expecting a lot more from it. But it was fine, and the sort of last quarter I would say was genuinely very gripping, but the rest of it I just kind of could take or leave it. It was a good book, but it wasn't anything special to me personally. The next book I read was, I'm gonna have to Gonna have to look down to read this. Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library by Chris Grabenstein. I gave this book 4 stars. This is a middle grade book about a boy named Kyle who is obsessed with all the games that this man, Mr. Lemoncello, has made. And one day Mr. Lemoncello is opening a brand new library in Kyle's town, and he and some other people from his class are invited for this library's opening day, and also to compete in a puzzle-based competition. But I'm so sad this book didn't exist when I was like... Sorry about the noise of someone mowing their lawn. It's boiling hot today. I don't know who in their right mind would be mowing their lawn. Do they not know I'm filming? Very rude of them. As I was saying, I'm so sad that this book didn't exist when I was like 11. Puzzles and libraries were like my 2 favourite things as a kid. I'm making myself sound so interesting. But this book was just a really great time. I really liked that the main overarching theme of this book was friendship and working together, and showing that that's what gets you to win or to really improve your work, and it really helps to work together and have lots of different ideas going around, and everyone has something to offer to a team. I thought that was a really great theme and was done really well. Overall, the puzzles were interesting. I thought they would be too simple and like it would be kind of boring, but actually the puzzles were really interesting, and I certainly didn't like figure it out instantly, so it was really great. The puzzle solving was really great, the teamwork was really great, the characters were interesting, and overall it was just a really fun and quirky read. The next book I read was Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This is the second book in the Strange the Dreamer series. I believe it's only going to be a duology, but it certainly did set up for potentially maybe not a follow-on from this story, but a story taking place in this universe, because I believe her first series, A Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, which I haven't read yet but I do plan to, also takes place in the same universe. But I gave this book 5 stars. This book blew my mind. I read Strange the Dreamer last year and I gave it 3 stars. I didn't hate it by any means, but it was just kind of okay for me. I didn't like the romance. It was just very slow paced and did not keep me that captivated. But this book was incredible. I'm literally so shocked because I just listened to it because I thought I might as well finish series. I don't really like to leave series unfinished. But boy am I glad I read this book. It was insane. The plot started and it didn't stop. It was crazy. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I was so captivated I didn't want to put it down. I literally just wanted to know what was going to happen next. It was so exciting. The characters in this were so great. I really only liked Laszlo from the last book, but I liked the large majority of the characters in this book. We are introduced to 2 new characters who are sisters, and they go through a lot of suffering, and their bond and what they had to go through made me weep. Which is fitting seeing as the city is called Weep. I wept. It was just beautiful and so heartbreaking, and the main theme of the first book and the second book I won't go into spoilers about in case you haven't read the first book, but the themes are the effects of war over generations. This world had been led and ruled by a terrible person. Everyone suffered because of it, and it was just so thought-provoking to see generation after generation after generation suffer from these after effects of this war and this absolutely abhorrent reign of terror, and to see how each life had been so affected by at least one part of the whole system was like outstanding. It was just so well done. I literally have no words for how good this book was. Everything was handled perfectly. What I loved about this book is every single person was a villain to somebody. and seeing that and seeing how every character could be looked at as a hero or a villain. There were so many shades of greys to each character. It was art, like pure artwork. But this book was not slow by any means. It was action after action after action after action, but the real study on the human condition, I guess, was just incredible. The only thing I didn't particularly like about it was towards the end it seemed like too many things were happening. Like after like a big event, another big event would happen and another big event happened, and it was like, at what point are we calling this as the climax? That was the only point I had that I would change slightly, but apart from that it was just genius. It was one of my favourite books of the year, maybe all time. The next book I read or reread is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know I'm obsessed with this series. I obviously gave this book 5 stars again. This is a book about a girl called Morrigan Crow. She was born on a cursed day and therefore is blamed for everything that goes wrong in her town, even though it's not her fault. And one day she is whisked off by an eccentric mentor named Jupiter North, who takes her to the wonderful world of Nevermore, where she has to compete in trials to become part of the Wonder Society, which is like the best thing you could become part of in Nevermore. But this book is just fantastic. It's a middle grade series and I literally don't have a single bad word to say about this. I do plan on doing a non-spoiler review on this and also a review on Wonder Smith, the second book, because I just want to talk about them for like 10 minutes because I love them. So if you want a middle grade to read, this is just fantastic. I couldn't recommend it highly enough. It's just magical. The next book I read, which was a big surprise for me, was Jack of Hearts and Other Parts by Lev A.C. Rosen, I think is how you say it. I gave this book 4.5 stars. This is a book about Jack, and he is a gay teenager, and he one day agrees to start a column in his friend's magazine, a sex advice column, sex/relationship advice column, because he is extremely sex positive and has had a lot of romantic partners and sexual partners and that kind of stuff, and he feels like he has good advice to give, which he does. And one day he starts getting pink notes in his locker from a secret admirer, which gets steadily and steadily a lot darker and a lot more scary. I'm just so glad this book exists. It's going to be such an important book for queer teens who are growing up now, because it was just such a fantastic book. Jack was just a brilliant character. He is one of my favourite characters of all time. He was just so vibrant as a character, like you could imagine him existing 100%. To see someone just so comfortable in who they are, in their queerness, in their style, in their relationships, in their just everything he did with such confidence and such surety of who he was and where he wanted to be and what he wanted to do. And that was just such a fun experience, just to see someone living their life so comfortably. It was really quite inspiring, to be honest. Jack has 2 friends, Jenna and Ben, who are his best friends. Ben is gay, Jenna is straight, I believe. But they had such a brilliant friendship. It was built on such love, and they just wanted the best for each other. They just wanted each other to be happy and safe and loved, and it was a really nice part of the story because they just looked out for each other. And although they did fight, it was only ever because they wanted what was best for each other, so it was lovely. This book tackled so many topics, it was wild. I really liked the conversation around respectability politics and whether you can ever be too much. It's sort of centred around the idea of Jack was gay and very openly gay, and very openly he dressed quite femininely, and he presented himself in a stereotypically gay way. And there was another gay person who thought that Jack was the reason why queer people weren't respected, and he wanted him to be less of himself. And that was it was handled so well and really showed that the reason a community is oppressed is not because of the people in it. It's not the fault of a person from that minority being too much. It's the fault of the people in the majority, and their oppression has nothing to do with how they present themselves, and that was a really, really well done topic. It also talked about the fetishization, it also talked about the fetishization, I'm just going to put the word, I honestly have no idea how you say that word, fetishization? I don't know how I say this word, but the fetishization of gay men by straight women, that was handled really well and was a really well done conversation. It also was extremely sex positive. It also talked about how sex doesn't have to be this like incredibly wonderful thing, and there are mistakes that are made, and it can be kind of awkward and it can be kind of weird, and it really normalized that, and I thought that was really great because I think it can seem quite intimidating reading other books. It's like this like perfect moment, and that's just not how it is for everybody, and I think that was done really well as well. And I could just go on for days about how brilliant this book was. Everything was handled so well. It was just incredible. The mystery to me was quite obvious, but apart from that, it was just a fantastic book. Oh, and also, finally, an author that can speak like a teenager. This dialogue was perfect. It was impeccable. Everything I could imagine me and my friends saying. Nothing felt stilted or awkward or forced. It was maybe the best teen dialogue I've ever read. It was just so natural, which was great. The next book I read, but DNF'd, was Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I have sort of a hit and miss relationship with Brandon Sanderson's work. Some of the books I've read are my favourite, and some of them just didn't really work for me. This is a book mainly about the magic system is that everyone has a breath, and you can collect breaths, but you are only born with one breath. And if you lose your breath, you see the world in a lot less vibrancy, you don't see colours, and you can't have these like heightened senses. But this book was so slow. I got to about 50% in, which was around it was over 300 pages, and I was thinking of powering through because I had spent so much time already reading it, but it just did not work for me at all. Like I said, I got to over 300 pages and it still felt like the book was just starting, like we were setting up. There was no plot, I was just so bored. I mean, it could be a case of it's not you, it's me, because I was quite anxious at the time and that may have marred my impression of it, but I was just bored to death and I just didn't want to continue. The next book I reread was The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan, the first book in the Trials of Apollo series. This is a book about the god Apollo who does something to anger his godly father Zeus and is sent to Earth as a punishment and has all his power stripped away, so he's just an average mortal, and he is the god of prophecies when he is a god, and all the prophecies around the world are being taken over by a group called the Triumvirate. This word. This is an episode of Izzy Can't Say Words, but yes, this is a 5-star, maybe 4.5 star book for me. I love everything. I'm a broken record. Rick Riordan's great. I love him. He's one of my favourite authors of all time. I love this book, and what I also really appreciate about this book is in every other series Rick Riordan has written, generally the main characters are extremely powerful in their godly gifts, but this book the main character is a mortal and he has no powers, and I think that was a really interesting take because I think it allowed people to connect more to this book because we also don't have powers, and to see someone leading the story and not having any powers as well, I really appreciated that, and I think that was a really great decision by him. The next book I reread, we can tell Izzy was on a Rick Riordan kick, The Son of Neptune by Rick Riordan. This is the second book in the Heroes of Olympus series. I read the first book kind of recently, so I didn't feel like I needed to read that first one to recap. I've read these books quite a lot, but I haven't read them in a couple of years, so I really wanted to revisit them, and this book still slaps. It's so good. I gave this book 4.5 stars, but it could probably be a 5-star book. It's just incredible. I thought that the Son of Neptune wasn't one of my favourites of the series, but it turns out it may be my favourite of the series. We'll have to wait and see, because I've always counted The House of Hades, the 4th book, as my favourite in the series, which I will be reading next, but this book may hold the top spot. A lot of people say this book is kind of slow, but I personally think it's really action-packed and I absolutely love it. If you don't know the Heroes of Olympus series, it's about a group of 7 characters, one of them being Percy Jackson, because this 5-book series leads on from the first 5-book series, the Percy Jackson series, but this book has more characters and different characters, and they are trying to stop the Earth goddess Gia from waking, and the 7 of them have to go on a real long quest, 5 books long, and they're all pretty darn thick. But yes, this book was such... I haven't read it in a while, and although I knew what was going to happen, like, it was still kind of a surprise. I was like, oh yeah, that was a good plot twist. Yes, Rick, keep it going. Yeah, give me more. I mean, I still kind of know what's happening, but do I? Who knows? I just love this book, so read it. And the final book is the Mark of Athena by Rick Riordan. This is the 3rd book in the Heroes of Olympus series. Again, it still holds its own. These books have aged well, is what I can say for it. It's just Rick Riordan's a genius. If you haven't tried his books, read them. But yeah, I obviously can't say what this book is about because it's the 3rd book in the series, but it follows the 7 demigods on their quest, living their life. Oh yeah, I forgot to say they were demigods. They're half god, half human. They have magical powers from their godly parents. It's a great time. We are still on the 29th of the month, so I may have finished Wondersmith, the 2nd book in the Nevermore series by then. That's obviously a 5-star. I'm currently rereading Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and also rereading A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I may have finished them before the month is up, but I'm filming this now, so yeah, those. I've literally reread so many books. I've got a problem. Someone tell me to read new books in July. I'll do my best, but once I get in a Rick Riordan mood, there's not much I can do to sway myself. I just gotta quench that thirst for the genius that is Rick Riordan. Let me know down below what your favourite book of June was. It was Pride Month, so I hope you're all reading your queer books. And I certainly have been, actually, not even intentionally, but all these rereads are LGBTQ+, so go me. But yes, I have read so many great books this month, but either Muse of Nightmares or Jack of Hearts and Other Parts. Probably Muse of Nightmares. I'm still not over that. Do I need to do a half-an-hour gush about that book? Probably, because I literally am obsessed with it. I need to buy that beautiful red hardcover. That's what I need in my life. That's what everyone needs in their life, you know. So thank you so much for watching. I will leave my Twitter and Goodreads down in the description box. My Goodreads is a little bit behind on the reviews, so hopefully in July I will be able to keep up with my reviews because I'll be able to type more. We can hope. But yes, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to try and edit this down to be as short as I can make it so that I'm not just rambling about all the books I love for hours. So let's hope this isn't too long. Thank you so much for watching. Again, let me know your favourite book of the month of June, and I will see you next time. Bye!